Hi everyone, my name is Rachael Kangas and I work with the Florida Public Archaeology Network in our Southwest region, and today we are out at Charlotte Harbor Cemetery and we are going to talk about how to properly clean a headstone. So there are a couple of things that you need to keep in mind when you're cleaning a headstone. So we're going to go over all of that today. So at the Florida Public Archaeology Network, we teach people in Florida about archaeology and history. We have lots of different ways that we do that, and one of them is through trainings. So we give a training that's called the Cemetery Resource Protection Training, CRPT, CRIPT, and that teaches people how to legally and ethically work in historic cemeteries in Florida. So we give this training to individuals, to the public, to local governments. Anytime we have a group that's interested, we're happy to put a training together. We've been doing virtual trainings since March. So if that's something that you're interested in, please feel free to reach out and let us know. So in the CRIPT training, we talk about lots of different things. We talk about laws that keep cemeteries safe in Florida. We talk about how to monitor and keep cemeteries safe, how to create management plans for cemeteries, and of course, how to clean headstones. So there are a lot of kind of missteps that we see people make in cemeteries when they're trying to clean headstones. Of course, you know, folks love cemeteries. They're nice places to go for walks, to learn about local history and local people. And we know that people really love to kind of try and give back to the community, and one of the ways that they do that is through cleaning headstones. But we see a lot of common missteps that I want to talk about before we get into how to properly clean a headstone. So some things that we see pretty common that you never want to do on a headstone. First, don't ever use bleach on a headstone. Bleach will end up corroding the stone. It can actually make white marble turn orange. It's very, very harmful to stone. So don't ever put bleach on a headstone. You also don't want to use anything that's pressurized. So you don't want to use like a pressure washer. You don't want to use a sandblaster, nothing that's pressurized, because over time, that pressure is actually going to end up wearing the headstone down to the point where you can't even read the inscription anymore. And I'm assuming that everyone who's going out and trying to care for headstones wants them to last for a very long time. So we have to keep in mind those really long-term effects. So don't ever use anything with pressure. If you're going to scrape a headstone and clean off like lichen or buildup, don't ever use anything that has metal in it. So don't use a metal brush, don't use a metal scraper. The best things you can use are plastic and wood, because those are softer and they're not gonna damage the stone. I've seen a few people put flour on headstones, and we really don't recommend putting flour or anything else like that on a headstone. And the reason specifically for flour is because flour will actually help things grow on a headstone, and we don't want that, right? We want these headstones to stay nice and clean for as long as we can, and if you put flour on them, that will actually feed the little microbes that will end up growing on the headstones. So the best thing to use to clean a headstone we have here, it's called D2 biological solution. This is actually what they use to keep like the Washington Monument clean and things like that. So this is a really well-tested, fantastic product. It's non-toxic, biodegradable. It won't hurt plants that are around the headstones that you're cleaning, and it's safe to use. So this is the best thing that you can possibly use to clean a headstone. And the cool thing about D2 is it actually gets into all of the pores and all the little nooks and crannies on the stone, and it will continue working and continue to kill all the biological things that are growing on the headstone for up to a year. So D2 is the best thing to use. If you don't have access to D2, the best thing you can do to clean a headstone is just use warm water and a soft bristle brush. So why don't we go ahead and clean this headstone using D2. So the first thing you're going to do if you want to clean a headstone is you're going to get permission to be and work in the cemetery. So a lot of cemeteries are open, like out here at Charlotte Harbor Cemetery. This is a publicly accessible cemetery. That's not true for all cemeteries. And even if it's a publicly accessible cemetery, it doesn't mean that you have permission to touch a headstone, right? So the first thing you're going to do is you're going to talk to whoever owns the cemetery or manages the cemetery. We can also always help you find out who that is, but you want to talk to the person who manages the cemetery and get permission to clean headstones. Different cemeteries are managed in different ways. So at some cemeteries, there's a company or a person who manages the whole thing, and they can give you permission to clean, any number of headstones. But at other cemeteries, the graves are individually owned by descendants and families of people who are buried there. So the last thing you want to do is get into any trouble trying to do a good thing. So make sure that you get permission to clean the headstones before you start. And then when you have permission and you go to your headstone that you want to clean, the first thing you're going to do is kind of do a once-over, look at the stone. You want to make sure that there are no large cracks in it, that it's not crumbling. The last thing you want to do is make a headstone worse by trying to clean it. So make sure that you check it out. This headstone that we're going to clean today, this looks to be in good shape, right? It's not moving. It doesn't look like it's going to fall over or anything like that. So we're comfortable cleaning this one. So once you've checked the headstone, you've made sure that it's intact and you're not going to do more harm by trying to clean it. The first thing that you can do is you can I just use a toothbrush for this. I use the back of the toothbrush, the plastic part. You can also use a plastic scraper or a wooden scraper, like a popsicle stick or something like that. Again, don't ever use metal because metal will harm the stone. But you can just use the back part of a toothbrush, and any of these big things that you see, just kind of brush those off. And these are lichen. These are things that are actually growing on the stone and in the stone. So any of the big chunks that you can get off before you put the D2 solution on is good. And of course, make sure that you're looking at the inscription. A lot of times you'll get stuff that grows inside the lettering. So if you can make a whole big cemetery kit if you want to, that has lots of different sizes of things, so you can actually get into the different letters and into all the little grooves and nooks and crannies. But if you don't have that, just do the best you can to get some of this big stuff off. Okay, so once you have gone over it once and kind of gotten some of those big chunks of anything that might be on there off, then we can use our D2 solution. So at FPAN we have these big jugs of D2 that we use, but they sell them in gallon bottles and in spray bottles. It used to be really hard to find, but now you can actually find it in most home stores. D2 is great. You can use it full strength. Or you can cut it, with 1 part D2 to 1 part water, and sometimes even more diluted depending on how much growth is on the stone. So it's a really great product, and a little bit will go a long way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our D2. I've got mine in a spray bottle. And we're going to spray the stone. I'm going to start at the bottom, move to the top. We're going to cover the whole stone. You can wear gloves if you want to with D2, but it's non-toxic, so I typically don't, but of course, do what makes you comfortable. And a lot of people will wet the stone first. According to the D2 instructions, you put it on a dry stone. It will work if you wet the stone before you apply the D2. Okay, so we've sprayed the whole thing. It's nice and wet. Now we're going to let it sit for about 5 minutes and let it do some of its magic, and then we'll scrub it in 5 minutes. So as we wait for the D2 to set up, we can talk a little bit about what we see on this headstone. So you might have noticed there is a small lamb on the top of the headstone, and this is a really common representation that we see with child burials. And we can see from reading the inscription that this person was born and died on September 3rd, 1928. So this is indeed, and you can just see from the size of the grave that it's very small. So this is a child's burial. And like I said, we see the symbology of the lamb on top really commonly with child burials. Okay, so we've waited 5 minutes. The D2 has set up. If the stone starts to dry, just feel free to spray it again with some more D2. And what we're gonna do now is we're gonna take a soft bristle brush, Again, don't ever use a metal or wire brush on this. You always want to use a soft bristle brush. It can be natural or synthetic fibers. And what you're going to do is you're just going to start scrubbing the headstone. Spray it with some more D2. So I still have some lichen that are growing on the headstone, so I'm going to switch from my big brush to a toothbrush. And again, you can use any brush that works as long as it's a soft bristle brush and not metal. Okay, so we've scrubbed our headstone. So now I'm going to take clean water. I use one of these little kind of all-purpose sprayers. Pump it up, and you're just going to take clean water and rinse the headstone. You can see those years and years of biological growth and dirt just kind of melt off. So now we've rinsed our stone. It looks beautiful. So once you've rinsed it, once you can kind of look at it, we still have some lichen that are growing on here. So if you see that, you can spray it with D2 again, go back over it. But the coolest thing about D2 is that it will stay in the stone even after you rinse it. It'll stay in the stone and continue working. So if we come back a week from now and then like 3 months from now, this stone will be beautifully white. So the D2 continues to work and one application is good for up to a year. So if you ever have a headstone, let's say you have D2 but you don't have any fresh water, you can just spray the D2 on and just let it sit, and it will continue to work, and it will continue to clean the stone even if you're not able to scrub and rinse it. So D2 is an awesome solution. Like I said, if you don't have access to D2, the best thing you can do to clean a headstone is just use warm water and a soft bristle brush. Don't ever use metal on a headstone. Don't ever put bleach on a headstone. Don't use pressure washing or sandblasting. Don't put flour or anything else on a headstone. All we want to be doing is gently cleaning this headstone, and it will help it last for many, many years to come.